to me talking in my room. Today's little bit is going to be on the work experience part of the course, and I've got to, in no less than 400 words, analyse the role the media plays in reporting on the coronavirus. So, the first part of that is, how has the media influenced the public during this coronavirus pandemic, i.e. panic buying?
You don't have to buy so much, take it easy, just relax.
I think they had a big part to play. You know, there's quite a lot of panic buying that was going on within the first, I don't know, month or so. Shelves were empty. People were like, oh, because it was built up, or I perceived that the media built it up to be this big serious thing that, like, we're going to have to go into lockdown and we're going to have to hunker down for the winter and we've got to hibernate and there isn't enough for people. And it's like, you know, if all you watch is the news, if that's like your only source of information, the news by nature focuses on negatives. As in, like, that's like, I was saying to a mate the other day, you never hear the report about Jimmy who won the 3-legged race, because that's not... It's unfortunate to say, but positive things don't impact the wider community as much as negative things do. So the news by nature is quite negative focused, and so you watch a news report and they'll be like, yeah, there isn't enough loo roll and things are getting quite bad out here. And then you watch another news report and they're like, and now we're running out of hand soap, this is really starting to... Do you know what I mean? It's like you've got to draw your information from several sources. You know, I think the daily briefings have been really interesting for me to watch, because you have the government come out and they go, do you know what, we're doing alright, people are dying, and we're, you know, which is really unfortunate, but we seem to be more or less flattening the curve. And then, you know, their little period where news reporters can ask questions, they're like, so can I get a comment on how you're failing the country right now? And it's just like, come on, man. Like, they just said that we're on our way out of it. And I understand that nothing that the government ever does will be enough. As in, like, no matter how hard anybody tries, it doesn't matter which political party's in power. No matter how hard any one party tries, they are never going to be able to do everything. They are never ever going to be able to make it perfect. And as I've spoken about, with the media's nature to focus on negatives, it won't focus on how many people the lockdown is helping, it will focus on how many people are suffering as a result of the lockdown. So you will have, you know, like, they might do a story about how old people are becoming isolated, and you know, and about how everyone's mental health is suffering and like all this sort of stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, but we're doing that to stop us all dying. It's like, we've got quite a contagious disease going around at the moment, this respiratory. So, you know, like, as young people, we're smokers and don't treat our bodies very well, as in, like, is quite concerning. And yeah, I don't know quite where I was going with that, but I think that trying to have a balanced view on it is very difficult if you're just watching the news, because the news will just focus on what isn't being done. And you know, you see quite a lot of people who their only source of information is the news, and then they come outside and they're frightened of other people, and they're frightened because it's like, it's fed that negativity and it's made it grow, and then the situation becomes more dangerous and more scary than it actually is. You know, there was a woman in the place that I work, and she was walking around with gloves on, and she was touching things, picking things up, and then when she wasn't picking things up, she was holding her hand over her mouth. As in, like, that's that's not how it works.
That's not how the Force works.
It's like, if you touch something and then put your hand to your face, you are transferring what was potentially on that onto your face. And she was probably thinking like, oh, I've got to cover my face and I've got to wear my gloves and I've got to pick things up to put them in the basket and all. And like, that's that sort of panic and that fear setting in that stops people from thinking rationally. You know, there's at the place where I work, we started limiting, you know, the number of people in the store, saying that everybody had to take a trolley just so we could keep track of how many people were in the store. And so many people are getting angry at me just because I'm like, you know, do you mind taking a trolley? And they're like, oh, I don't want one. And I'm like, yeah, it's just for the head count, it's just so we can keep track of people. And they're like, really? And it's like, come on, man. I'm just trying to keep myself safe as much as I'm trying to keep you safe. So the next part of the question is, there are many different types of media reporting on the current situation. Analyse if they are reporting the crisis in the same way. I mean, there's a number of factors which could go into that. So there's different news reports from different areas might have a different view on things. Say like the London Standard, you know, or like something like that. That might have quite a serious view because they were almost a month ahead of us in like the sort of pace in which the coronavirus infected people and the transmission spreads, because obviously it's such a packed city, and so their reporting of things might have been quite serious. Things were looking quite bad. Flip to maybe the Lake District in Cumbria. I don't know how many cases they've had, but they're probably not going to be as bad as, you know, a major city. So their local news might just be reinforcing the stay inside, stay safe, wash your hands, that sort of stuff, and just about how local businesses and local people are making that personal sacrifice of self-isolating. And so that could impact how news reports, you know, are covered. Another thing that could impact it is they say that the press should not be biased, but it is. Like, it just is. And some of them are more than others. You know, like people call the Telegraph the Tory graph. You know, because they I can't make sweeping statements here. I've got to be careful about how I do it. They have the potential to err on the side of supporting conservative legislation and saying more positive things about conservatives than potentially other political parties. But yeah, so there's, you know, and there's The Guardian, which is quite liberal. You know, like during the election, they were literally posting articles on how to tactically vote to make sure the Conservatives didn't win in your area. And so there's biases like that, just around, just different, because if they're privately owned, you know, the person at the top of that, you know, like the whole idea is that they wouldn't, but they might have influence over who they support, what they support. So with the private ones, it's difficult to get them to stay impartial when they quite clearly have sides that they favour. You know, and then there's like BBC, ITV, and all that sort of stuff, and you know, I imagine the BBC might feel a sense of responsibility, being the national broadcast, to stay objective and to stay impartial. But I've personally seen in the past that they can tend to err on supporting a specific side, you know. So it's like a lot of people's motives and biases and just opinions can tend to influence their work. You know, if somebody writes an article, that somebody's going to have an opinion on the current state of things, and that might subtly influence their wording and the way in which they describe certain things. And it's like, it's not as big as like, oh, it's a giant conspiracy that like these guys are trying to sort this thing out and these guys are trying to sort this thing out. It's just more that people have opinions, and so that just creates like an unconscious bias. They're not even doing it on purpose. Some of them might be. I think it would be silly to say that some of them aren't doing it on purpose, but quite a lot of the time it's just an unconscious bias. What else have we got? What effect will this pandemic have on the media and world news? Well, I mean, it's kind of the most immediate impact is that that's all the news is about at the moment. So with obviously everything that's going on at the moment, how the current climate has impacted news reporting all over the world and in local areas, it is all specifically about the coronavirus. There's not a lot of reports about other stuff. You know, there was, from what I've seen from the news, there's been a bit of a topic of conversation around the leader in North Korea and about whether or not he's dead or in a coma, or you know, like, and whether his sister's going to succeed him and all that sort of stuff. But other than that, and like some tabloid stuff around like Victoria Beckham firing or furloughing or making redundant some of her workers because of the current climate and that sort of stuff, like, it is mainly focused around coronavirus. When are we going to be getting out of lockdown? People are sick and tired of it. People miss their friends, you know, and like sort of focusing purely around that. And I think moving forward, we will still, you know, they talk about news cycles, like say for example with Iraq, when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan and that sort of stuff, the news cycles, they would feature, you know, reports of what was going on with there for a while, and then something might happen somewhere else in the world, and then they go and cover that for a while. And it doesn't mean that the original conflict or the original thing that they were reporting on has stopped. It just means that something else has happened and they put their focus there. So at the moment, you know, like the whole sort of, before this it was Brexit, you know, it was Britain leaving the European Union. Or should I say England, because it looks like Scotland doesn't want to go. But yeah, and with that, Brexit was like always the topic of conversation, like, oh, the Germany have just said this, you know, like Italy have just said, oh, and like Nigel Farage is waving a Union Jack in Europe, and like, and all this sort of stuff, and you're just kind of like, right, okay. And now it's the coronavirus, so it's changed from that. You're not seeing anything about Brexit anymore, and now it's all about that, and its focus is on that. I don't know what will be next. I really don't. Maybe it will go back to Brexit. Maybe Trump will do something ridiculous and, you know, like have everybody up in arms about that. Maybe they'll finally get him impeached. Maybe Kim Jong-un will die, and they'll be talking about that for ages, because the new leader might be even more unstable than he was, and they might, you know, they might be constantly threatening nuclear war, or they might get into a Twitter shouting match with Trump. You know, like there's a million things that could happen. There's an entire world of potential, you know, like futures out there. So, but at the moment, it's just taken the news cycle up, and it is just purely focused on that. Let's see what else we've got. So that looks to be about it. It says that it must include screen grabs of different newspaper reports. These should be both local and national. Embed news clips that you can find to support your project. I can do that all in editing. I think I'm done. Just before I go, it's important to get a tea break in there. I've just been talking for like, what, like 10-15 minutes? I hope you guys are staying sane. I'll see you soon. Hey. I just thought I'd add something pretty amusing which happened to me while I was doing the editing for this specific video. Basically I had to, as the brief suggests for the work experience thing, you've got to like find as many news clips as possible to support what you're talking about and clip them in. And and I was literally, I'd just been watching a couple of news clips to see whether they were right for the purposes that I needed them for, and I just started to feel really anxious. Like it was like they were trying to create panic within me and make me behave. Yeah, it was just, and I turned to my housemate and I was like, I'm freaking out a little bit here. He's like, why? And I'm like, because I'm watching this news report about how people have started ignoring the lockdown now that, you know, we've had the number of cases drop in the past couple of days, and they've started going outside, and I've seen videos of full streets, and I'd like work myself up. But like, that was all just from watching a couple of clips. Just literally a couple of clips so I could snip them onto the timeline. And I was like, what? Why do I feel like this? I don't like it. So just from cutting together the footage that I needed to make my point, there was a physical change within me of being focused on that and then being like, oh my fuck, things are bad. Like, oh my god. Yeah. I thought that was really, it just made the point perfectly that, you know, like, you watch the news, it creates panic and anxiety within you. It doesn't help that I'm drinking tea like a fiend, but yeah, it's just the way I'm coping. But yeah, so me watching clips of the news to cut in for a video talking about how the news creates panic made me feel panicked. Yeah. Yeah. I'll see you guys in the next one. I didn't like that.